Hi, I'm Dave McKee, and we're at the Federation of Fly Fishers. The pattern I'm going to tie today is the Dave's Emerger, which is a fly that was developed by Dave Corcoran, who was the owner of the River's Edge Fly Shop in Bozeman, and he developed this fly for the Bighorn River. I've since, along with many other guides and other anglers, have found this fly to be enormously effective in tailwater fisheries like the Bighorn and the Missouri, the Madison, as well as Spring Creeks and on the Yellowstone as well. It's a very generic mayfly emerger. It can be tied in a variety of colors and easy to tie and enormously effective, which in my opinion makes it a great fly. So we'll get started. The hook that I like to use for this fly is a Tiemco 3769, which is a short-shanked wet fly hook. Another hook that works well is the Dairiki 075. Either of them are just fine. I am going to use an 8/0 thread. The color that I'm going to use is olive dun. Black is also very good for this. And I like to use this small diameter thread just because it's a small fly and I want to keep it nice and skinny. First step is that I'm going to start my thread towards the back of the hook, let it hang about even with the barb. I'm going to clip that off. And then I'm going to add a tail to it. And what I like to use for the tail is a natural wood duck, which is a phenomenal feather. It has the perfect color, kind of tan, and it has the natural barring in there, which really looks buggy. I'm going to take this feather and just pull down the fuzz and just go ahead and clip that off so it's out of the way. And then I'm going to simply take a pretty good number of these fibers and separate them from the rest of the bunch and pull them down just enough so that the tips line up so that I get a nice tail there. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off the rest of the feather. And you can see that I have a nice little tail right there. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that right on top of the hook. The tail is going to be probably 1/4 inch long or less. I'm tying this on a size 16 hook right now. This fly also works well in 18s, even 20s. And I'm going to go ahead and just tie that right down like so. Now I'm going to go ahead and wrap forward on top of some of this wood duck right here, right on top of the hook shank, about halfway up, and trim it down. I'll show you why in just a second. Okay, the next step is I'm going to take some copper wire. I've put the wire on a bobbin. If you've got an extra bobbin laying around, it's real handy to put your wire on there. It keeps it easy to control and also keeps you from wasting a lot of the wire. The color I'm going to tie this with, which has been my tried and true favorite, is copper brown. But standard copper wire, red, olive, black, and I think they have brown wire. All those work well. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and on the side of the hook that faces you, which seems to be easiest, I'm going to go ahead and put the tip of this wire in, and I'm going to wrap that down on top of where I had wrapped that wood duck, and I'm going to try to keep it perfectly in line with the hook shank. What I'm attempting to do is keep everything right in here the same exact diameter so that I get a nice, smooth, even body. When you're making these small flies with wire bodies, things like copper johns or other small midge patterns, it's real easy to get an ugly, real bumpy body, and that's simply because there's bulk from a tail that you may have tied in, or you just didn't do a very neat job of keeping things under control underneath. Okay, so I've got it secured under there, and now I'm going to simply wrap this forward, and I kind of wrap one coil back into the next one, just so that these stay nice and tight and even. And the size of wire that I use on this size 16 is the BR, which I think stands for brassy. It's basically the medium gauge wire. I think they have small BR and medium, but it's the middle of the road one, and that works well. So now I have my nice even body, right, like so. Okay, now the next step is I'm going to take this wood duck feather I was using before, and I'm going to separate another bunch, and this is going to be for the wing. And this is the only part of the fly that's a little bit tricky. I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to try to get the tips nice and neat. I'm going to go ahead and trim those off the feather. Okay, and what I'm going to do is hold this up. I'm holding my fingers right in front of where the wire stopped, right in front of the body, and I'm lining up the tips even with the end of the tail. That's the key. Now I'm going to go ahead and secure this into place. A couple wraps. Go ahead and trim that off. And now I'm going to add some peacock for the thorax. You could also use some dubbing in here. There's peacock colored dubbing, olive brownish dubbings. They work just fine. Probably a little bit more tough than the peacock, but nothing looks as good as the peacock, so that's why I like to use it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and secure. I grabbed 2 of them, and I put that right in front of the wing that I tied in, and now I'm going to simply wrap this around 2 or 3 times and go ahead and tie it off. I'll trim those, and now the next step. This is a little tricky because there's not a whole lot of room right in here, but there's enough. We're going to pull this forward, the wood duck forward over top of the peacock as if we were making a wing case, and I'm going to be wrapping it right directly behind the eye of the hook. Okay, get it nice and secure. Now I'm going to bring it back, try to gather it up towards the tail and tie over top of it. And in the process of doing this, I'm also making the head of the fly. And that's about all there is to it. I'm going to go ahead now and whip finish it. You put a little cement on there if you wanted to, but that's the basic fly. It's really simple. It doesn't look like much, but it is an enormously effective fly. It can be fished with a nymph rig. It also works really well as a dropper below a dry fly during a mayfly hatch. It's not heavy enough that it'll pull a dry fly underneath, and it works great. There's another variation of this fly also. Instead of using the wood duck for the wing, I like to use crystal flash for it. And that's something that works real well if you like flies with a little bit of flash on them.